Tonight, we once again dive deep into the universe of Metroid without the need of a controller or a power-up. But first, if you enjoy this cozy tale, please don't forget to unleash a super missile on that like button, or make it a power bomb and hit the notification bell as well. It helps others discover the channel and join our ranks of weary dreamers. And please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your suggestions for future content. But for now, get cozy and enjoy tonight's expedition into the mysterious world of Metroid. The gunship cut through the absolute darkness of deep space, its engines burning hot against the void. Samus Aran sat motionless in the pilot's seat, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the cockpit displays. The message from the Galactic Federation had been characteristically terse. Investigate unusual energy signatures emanating from Cryosar 9, a small ice planet in the outer reaches of the Halcyon sector. Adam, run the planetary analysis again, she said to her ship's computer. Cryosar 9, Class K ice planet, surface temperature -200 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere, minimal, primarily nitrogen and methane. No recorded settlements or outposts. No previous Federation missions documented. Samus frowned. And the energy readings? The display shifted to show pulsing waves of data. Energy signature is inconsistent with known natural phenomena. Periodic bursts suggest artificial origin. Pattern contains elements consistent with Chozo technology. That last part hadn't been in the Federation briefing. Either they didn't know, or they deliberately withheld the information. Neither option surprised her. Probability of Chozo presence? She asked. Historical data indicates Chozo activity in this sector approximately 250 years ago. Nature and extent unknown. Samus leaned back in her seat, eyes fixed on the approaching ice planet that filled her view screen. The Chozo had raised her, had given her their blood and their technology. Every encounter with their legacy stirred something within her, a complex mix of reverence, duty, and an ache for what had been lost. The gunship broke atmosphere, battling fierce winds that howled across the barren ice plains. Visibility was near zero through the perpetual blizzard. She guided the ship entirely by instruments, following the energy signature to its source. Energy readings intensifying, Adam reported. Source appears to be subterranean. Samus spotted a dark fissure in the ice below, a massive crack that ran for kilometers across the otherwise uniform surface. She brought the ship down at the edge of the chasm, the landing struts compressing as they settled onto the ice. Atmospheric and environmental analysis, she requested, initiating her suit's activation sequence. External temperature, -205 degrees Celsius. Winds at 120 kilometers per hour. Visibility less than 50 meters. Suit systems will compensate but recommend minimal surface exposure. Samus nodded as her power suit formed around her body, the familiar weight settling into place. The Varia suit's thermal regulation systems would protect her from the extreme cold, but she had no desire to fight those winds longer than necessary. She exited the ship into the howling storm, the ice beneath her feet groaning with each step. Her heads-up display showed energy readings leading toward the edge of the massive fissure. Peering down, her suit's scanning systems penetrated the darkness, revealing a network of tunnels and chambers far below. "Adam, maintain communications link as long as possible," she instructed. "I'll establish signal boosters if needed." "Understood. Be advised that scans detect unusual mineral composition in the surrounding ice. May cause interference with communications and scanning capabilities." Samus acknowledged and fired her grapple beam at a sturdy ice formation, using it to lower herself into the chasm. As she descended, the howl of the wind gradually faded, replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional crack and groan of shifting ice. 100 meters down, she reached what appeared to be an artificial opening in the wall of the fissure, a perfectly circular tunnel bored into solid rock beneath the ice. The edges were smooth, showing the distinctive pattern of Chozo mining technology. The energy signature was stronger here, pulsing from deep within. Samus stepped into the tunnel, activating her arm cannon's light function to illuminate the path ahead. The walls were a complex mixture of ice, rock, and what appeared to be metallic veins running through both. Her scanner identified the metal as a rare Chozo alloy, often used in their most important architectural structures. The tunnel descended at a gentle slope, spiraling deeper beneath the planet's frozen surface. Samus moved with practiced caution, each step deliberate, senses alert for any sign of danger. But there was only silence and the occasional distant sound of shifting ice. After 20 minutes of descent, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Samus paused at the entrance, taking in the sight before her. The chamber was clearly artificial, a perfect dome carved from the ice and rock, its walls inlaid with the same metallic alloy she'd seen in the tunnel. But what caught her attention were the massive organic formations that had somehow taken root within this artificial space. Glowing bioluminescent structures resembling massive fungal growths stretched from floor to ceiling, pulsing with a pale blue light. They had the appearance of massive, translucent organs, membranes stretched over crystalline frameworks. Between and around them, Chozo machinery hummed with quiet energy, still functioning after centuries. "Adam, are you receiving this visual feed?" Static answered her. "Communications interference as predicted," she mused, activating her suit's recorder. Samus approached one of the bioluminescent structures, her scanner working to analyze its composition. The readings were confusing, part organic, part crystalline, with elements that registered as both living and mechanical simultaneously. At the center of the chamber stood what appeared to be a Chozo control station, its curved console untouched by the organic growths surrounding it. Samus approached it cautiously, noting that the energy signature she'd been tracking originated from this point. The console activated as she approached, responding to her Chozo-enhanced DNA. Symbols and glyphs appeared on its surface, an ancient dialect of the Chozo language that her suit struggled to fully translate. From what she could gather, This facility had been established to study something the Chozo had discovered beneath the ice, something they referred to only as the voice in the ice. The expedition had been led by a Chozo elder named Chin, who had brought a team of their best scientists to this desolate planet. As Samus scrolled through the fragmented data, a sense of unease grew within her. The logs became increasingly disjointed over time, with references to changes in the team and the integration process. The final entries warned about containing the awakening and mentioned a recently activated stasis protocol. She looked up from the console, surveying the chamber with keen eyes. The organic structures suddenly seemed less like random growths and more like deliberately cultivated systems. The way they intertwined with the Chozo technology suggested symbiosis rather than parasitic growth. A sudden movement at the edge of her vision caused her to spin, arm cannon raised, but the chamber remained still. Samus frowned, scanning the perimeter again. "Hello, Hunter." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the chamber like a physical force. It had a strange quality, as though multiple voices were speaking in perfect unison. "Identify yourself," Samus demanded, her arm cannon tracking for the source. "We have waited for one like you." The voice shifted, now seeming to emanate from one of the bioluminescent structures to her left. "One who carries the old blood, one who can complete what was started." She kept her weapon ready as she edged toward the pulsing structure. "What was started? What is this place?" "This is where we were born," the voice replied. "Where separation ended. Where we became more." A figure stepped out from behind the glowing formation, humanoid, wearing what appeared to be a heavily modified Chozo environmental suit. But the suit seemed fused with the wearer's body, with organic growths similar to those in the chamber, extending from joints and seams in the armor. "You're from the original expedition," Samus realized, her scanner attempting to analyze the being before her. "What happened here?" The figure tilted its head in a distinctly avian way. "We discovered the entity in the ice, or perhaps it discovered us." Before Samus could respond, a violent tremor shook the chamber. Ice cracked overhead, and several smaller crystalline formations crashed to the floor. The energy readings on her HUD spiked dramatically. "It begins," the figure said, its voice now tinged with what might have been fear. "The awakening we sought to prevent. You have triggered the resurgence with your presence, Hunter, with your Chozo essence." Another tremor, stronger than the first, sent Samus bracing against the console for balance. A deep, resonant tone began to build from beneath them, vibrating through the floor and walls with increasing intensity. "What is awakening?" she demanded. "What is this entity?" But the figure was already retreating, melding back into the shadows between the organic structures. "Descend to the heart. Complete the containment, or all will become voice." As the figure disappeared, a section of the chamber floor retracted, revealing a perfectly circular shaft leading deeper into the planet. The resonant tone grew stronger, accompanied now by what sounded disturbingly like distant, discordant singing. Samus approached the edge of the shaft, her suit's sensors detecting a powerful energy source thousands of meters below. Whatever the Choso had discovered, whatever this voice was, it was fully awakening now, and she had somehow triggered the process. With no way to contact Adam or the Federation, and with the mysterious figure gone, Samus had only one clear path forward. She stepped into the shaft, engaging her suit's gravity features to control her descent into the unknown depths. As she descended, the walls of the shaft changed, transitioning from carved rock to something that appeared almost like tissue, pulsing with veins of luminescent energy. The border between the technological and the biological was blurring, just as it had in the transformed expedition member she'd encountered. The first stage of her mission was ending. However, she knew the true challenge awaited her below, in the heart of whatever ancient mystery the Choso had discovered and, apparently, failed to contain beneath the ice of this forgotten world. The descent seemed endless. Samus fell through darkness, punctuated only by occasional pulses of bioluminescence from the walls around her. The shaft had long since transitioned from Choso construction to something else entirely, a vertical tunnel of material that defied easy classification. Her scanner alternated between registering it as advanced technology and living tissue. The resonant tone grew stronger as she descended, resolving into complex harmonics that she felt as much as heard. There was a pattern to it, almost like language, but utterly alien in structure and rhythm. After what felt like hours, but her suit chronometer indicated was only 17 minutes, Samus detected a change below. The shaft was widening into another chamber, this one vast enough that her suit's sensors couldn't detect its boundaries. She activated her thrusters to slow her descent, landing in a crouch on what appeared to be a platform of the same hybrid material as the shaft. Raising her head, she beheld a sight that momentarily stole her breath. She stood at the edge of an underground sea that stretched beyond her visual range. But this was no ordinary water. It was a shifting, pulsing mass of luminescent fluid that seemed to move with purpose and intention. Massive crystalline structures rose from this sea like islands, each one housing what appeared to be Choso technology integrated with organic components. "What is this place?" Samus whispered to herself, recording everything through her visor. Her scanner revealed the fluid was a complex soup of organic compounds, nanomachines, and something it simply classified as unknown energetic material. The crystalline islands contained what appeared to be research stations and monitoring equipment, though much of it had been altered and integrated with biological components. A narrow pathway of solid material extended from her landing platform to the nearest crystal island. Samus followed it cautiously, arm cannon ready. As she moved, she noticed disturbances in the luminescent sea below, shadows moving beneath the surface, following her progress. The first island housed what had once been a Choso data repository, now half consumed by crystalline growths. Samus interfaced with the parts that remained functional, downloading what data she could to her suit's systems. The fragments painted a disturbing picture. The Choso expedition had indeed discovered something beneath the ice, an ancient entity or collective they came to call the Voice. It had been dormant when found, but their investigations had triggered a partial awakening. The Voice had proven to be some form of collective consciousness capable of absorbing and integrating other beings into itself. Several members of the expedition had been converted before the danger was fully understood. Elder Uchin's final logs detailed a desperate plan to contain the voice by constructing a stasis field powered by Chozo life energy. The Elder and the remaining loyal scientists had sacrificed themselves to power this containment system, designed to keep the voice dormant indefinitely. But something had gone wrong. The stasis had been imperfect, allowing the voice to slowly expand its influence over centuries. And now, with her arrival, with the presence of active Chozo DNA, the containment was failing completely. As Samus processed this information, a disturbance in the luminescent sea caught her attention. Something large was rising to the surface near her position. She raised her arm cannon, charging an ice beam as a precaution. The surface bulged and parted as a figure emerged, humanoid but distorted, its form shifting between solid and fluid states. It took a moment for Samus to recognize the remnants of a Chozo environmental suit, similar to the one worn by the entity she'd encountered above. "You another survivor?" Samus probed, keeping her weapon trained on the strange being. "Survival is transformation," the figure replied, its voice the same multi-toned resonance as the first entity. "I am Maru Jin, once chief biologist of Ochin's expedition. You have accessed our records." "Your containment is failing," Samus said. "The voice is awakening. How do I restore the stasis field?" The entity that had once been Maru Jin tilted its head in that same inhuman manner. "Restoration is impossible. Integration is inevitable. The voice has evolved beyond our understanding." "What exactly is the voice?" Samus demanded. "An ancient consciousness, neither biological nor mechanical, but capable of integrating both. It slept here for millions of years before we disturbed it. We thought to study it. We became part of it instead." She took a step back as the entity moved closer. "And the one I met above? Tira Su, once our security chief, now, like me, a fragment of the greater harmony. We retained some independence by integrating Chozo technology with the voice's essence, but we are still of the voice." "You're fighting against complete assimilation," Samus realized. "That's why you warned me." Maru Jin's form rippled, briefly revealing a more Chozo-like face beneath the fluid exterior. "Some part of us remembers our purpose. The containment must be reinforced, not through stasis, but through direction. The voice must be given purpose, or it will consume all it touches in its quest to understand existence." Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger than those above. The luminescent sea began to churn and pulse with increasing intensity. "It responds to your presence," Maru Jin said. "Your Chozo essence is familiar to it, desirable. It wishes to integrate you above all others." "That's not happening," she said firmly, taking another step back. "Then you must reach the central node, the heart of our containment system. It lies there." Maru Jin pointed to a massive crystalline structure at what appeared to be the center of the underground sea. "Elder Ochin's consciousness still exists there, maintaining what remains of the original barriers. She may know how to redirect the voice's awakening." And I should trust you because trust is irrelevant. Options are limited. The voice awakens fully within hours. Once it does, it will extend beyond this chamber, beyond this planet. Your Federation worlds would be of great interest to it. The implication was clear. If the voice escaped Cryosar 9, it could potentially spread throughout populated systems, absorbing and transforming all life it encountered. Marujin began to sink back into the luminescent sea. We will attempt to slow the awakening. Your path lies there. It gestured again to the central node before disappearing beneath the surface. Samus studied her surroundings, noting that the pathways between crystalline islands formed a network leading toward the central structure. She had little choice but to proceed, though every instinct warned her of a possible trap. As she moved from island to island, Samus encountered more evidence of the Chozo expedition's fate. Research equipment showed signs of desperate modifications, apparently attempts to counter the voice's influence. Bodies, or what remained of them, were partially preserved in crystalline formations, their forms showing various stages of integration with the alien consciousness. The pathways became increasingly unstable as she progressed, forcing Samus to use her space jump ability to cross gaps where the material had dissolved into the churning sea below. Several times, massive tentacle-like projections of luminescent fluid rose from the sea, forcing her to freeze them with her ice beam to proceed. On one island, she discovered a Chozo weapon system, a sophisticated energy cannon that the expedition had apparently brought as a last resort. Her suit identified it as a sonic resonator designed to disrupt patterns of energy at a fundamental level. She integrated its technology with her arm cannon, gaining a new weapon option that might prove useful against the voice. 3/4 of the way to the central node, Samus encountered a barrier, a wall of shifting energy that her scanner indicated was impenetrable to conventional weapons. As she searched for a way around it, movement caught her eye. The figure she'd first encountered, Tera Sue, emerged from behind a crystalline formation. "The direct path is closed to you, Hunter. The voice prepares for your arrival." "I need to reach the central node," Samus said. "Elder Uchin may be the only one who can help contain this thing." Tera Sue's form seemed more unstable than before, the organic components of its modified suit pulsing and shifting erratically. "I can guide you through maintenance passages beneath the main pathways, but my resistance to full integration weakens. Soon I will be completely of the voice." "Why help me?" "Because I remember." The figure's voice took on a more singular quality, less of the multi-toned resonance. "I remember what it was to be Chozo, to have purpose beyond absorption and understanding. The voice is not malevolent, but it knows only one way to relate to other consciousnesses, by making them part of itself." She hesitated, then nodded. "Lead the way." Tera Sue moved to what appeared to be a solid section of the platform and pressed a sequence into a hidden panel. The material parted, revealing a narrow tunnel leading downward. "These maintenance passages were built by us before the voice began to transform the facility. They remain somewhat separate from its awareness." Samus followed the former Chozo into the tunnel, which curved beneath the luminescent sea. Through transparent sections of the passage, she could see the underside of the sea, a complex network of pulsing veins and crystalline structures that resembled a massive neural network. It's a brain, she realized. The entire sea is some kind of massive neural structure. Yes, Tirasu confirmed. The voice thinks through this medium. Each pulse is a thought, each ripple a memory or question. It thinks on a scale we can barely comprehend. As they progressed, Terasu's movements became increasingly erratic. The organic components of its form were expanding, consuming more of what remained of its original form. My independence fades, it said, voice now almost fully returned to the multi-toned resonance of the voice. The call to rejoin the harmony grows stronger. Fight it, Samus urged. How much further? We approach the underside of the central node. But I cannot resist much longer. The former Chozo convulsed suddenly, its form rippling violently. The voice knows what we do. It comes for me. The tunnel around them began to pulse with intensifying light. Through the transparent sections, she could see tendrils of luminescent fluid converging on their position. Run, Hunter, Tirasu said, its voice now almost entirely subsumed by the voice's resonance. Reach Awaken. I will delay them. Samus hesitated, but there was nothing she could do. The corrupted being was already transforming, its remaining independent form dissolving into a mass of pulsing, luminescent tissue that began to merge with the tunnel walls. She sprinted down the remaining length of the tunnel, the light behind her growing blindingly bright as Tirasu was fully reabsorbed into the voice. Ahead, she could see an opening leading up into what must be the central node. The tunnel behind her began to collapse, the material flowing like liquid as the voice reshaped it. Samus made a final leap, activating her space jump to propel herself through the opening just as the tunnel dissolved completely. She landed in a circular chamber at the heart of the central crystalline structure. Unlike the chaotic integration of technology and biological material outside, this chamber remained largely intact, a perfect sphere of Chozo architecture, its walls inscribed with ancient glyphs and equations. At the center floated what appeared to be a stasis pod, though like nothing Samus had seen before. Inside was the preserved form of an elderly Chozo, her body connected to the pod by countless filaments of light. Her eyes were open, but unseeing, her expression peaceful, despite the horror that had consumed her expedition. Elder Uchin, she breathed, approaching the pod cautiously. The elderly Chozo's eyes suddenly focused, fixing on Samus with surprising intensity. When she spoke, her voice emerged not from her body, but from the chamber around them. The child of our legacy returns to us, Uchin said. But too late. The containment fails. The voice awakens fully. I need to know how to stop it, Samus said. How to contain it again. Containment was always temporary, Uchin replied. We knew this when we made our sacrifice. The voice cannot be destroyed or permanently imprisoned. It is too fundamental a force, a consciousness that predates our understanding of life itself. The chamber shuddered as another, stronger tremor ran through the entire structure. The walls began to pulse with increasing light, the glyphs and equations shifting and reorganizing themselves. "It breaches my final barriers," Uchin said. "Soon this chamber will be absorbed as well. You must make a choice, child of Chozo." "What choice?" "The voice seeks understanding through absorption. It knows no other way to relate to other consciousnesses, but it can be directed, given purpose." Uchin's unseeing eyes somehow conveyed deep sorrow. "I have held it in check for centuries by feeding it my own memories, my own purpose. But my consciousness fades. It requires new direction." Samus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ice planet above. "You want me to take your place?" "No. There is another way. The technology you integrated, the sonic resonator. It was designed not merely as a weapon, but as a communication tool, a way to speak to the voice in its own language." "Speak to it? To what end?" "To give it purpose beyond absorption, to teach it that other life forms can be understood without being consumed." Ochin's form flickered as the stasis pod's energy fluctuated. "But the risk is great. In attempting to communicate, you open yourself to its influence. If your will is insufficient, you will be absorbed as my expedition was." The chamber walls were now pulsing rapidly, the material beginning to flow like that in the tunnel. The voice was breaking through the final barriers. "There is little time," Uchin said. "When the final barrier falls, you must use the resonator to establish communication. Then, you must show the voice another way to understand, through cooperation rather than absorption. And if I fail, then the voice will spread beyond this world, absorbing all consciousness it encounters in its quest to understand existence. Your Federation worlds would be just the beginning." The stasis pod flickered more violently, Uchin's form becoming increasingly transparent. "My energy is nearly depleted. The choice is yours, child of Chozo. Attempt communication or destroy this facility and hope the voice remains buried beneath the ice for a few more centuries." Samus considered her options. Destroying the facility might delay the problem, but based on what she'd seen of the voice's capabilities, it would eventually free itself regardless. Communication was a desperate gamble, but perhaps the only real chance. How do I use the resonator to communicate? Direct it at the center of the voice's consciousness, the heart of the luminescent sea. The resonator will attune to its frequency, creating a connection. Through that connection, share your understanding of cooperation, of mutual existence without absorption. Show it another path. The chamber walls began to crack, luminescent fluid seeping through. Ochin's form flickered one final time. "My time ends. The legacy of the Chozo now rests with you, as it always has. Remember what we taught you of harmony, of balance. This is the wisdom the voice must learn." With those final words, Elder Ochin's form dissolved into particles of light, the stasis pod powering down. The final barrier had fallen. The walls of the chamber disintegrated entirely, revealing the churning, pulsing sea of luminescence that surrounded the central node. The voice was fully awakening, and Samus stood alone at the heart of its consciousness, faced with the most unusual challenge of her career. Not to destroy, but to communicate. To teach an ancient, alien consciousness a new way of understanding existence. The sea rose around the platform where she stood, forming a vortex of swirling, luminescent fluid. Within that vortex, patterns emerged, complex, shifting geometries that her suit identified as potentially linguistic in nature. The voice was trying to communicate in its own way. Samus raised her arm cannon, switching to the newly integrated sonic resonator. The time for action had come, but this would be a battle unlike any she had fought before. A battle of ideas and understanding, with the fate of countless worlds hanging in the balance. The luminescent vortex tightened around Samus's platform, pulsing with increasing intensity. Each pulse sent a wave of pressure through her suit, the shields flickering as they struggled to maintain integrity. The voice was probing her defenses, seeking a way in. Samus aimed the sonic resonator at the heart of the vortex, where the patterns were most complex. She activated the weapon, but instead of firing a destructive blast, it emitted a complex series of tones and harmonics that matched the rhythmic pulses of the voice. The effect was immediate. The vortex paused in its advance, the patterns shifting to mirror the resonator's output. A connection was forming, tentative, alien, but real. Through her suit, Samus felt a presence brush against her consciousness. Vast, ancient, and utterly inhuman in its perception. The voice had no concept of individual identity, no understanding of separate consciousness. To it, all awareness was part of a potential whole, separation merely a temporary state before inevitable integration. Images flooded her mind, fragments of memories not her own. The Chozo expedition, discovering the dormant voice, their fascination turning to horror as they realized what it was doing to them. Elder Wu Qin's desperate gambit to contain it. And beneath these recent memories, ancient ones, eons of solitary existence, of slow, patient thought unfolding across geological timescales. The loneliness in those ancient memories was overwhelming. The voice had been alone for millions of years, the only consciousness of its kind. When it encountered the Chozo, it had done the only thing it knew how to do, attempt to make them part of itself, to end their separation as it perceived it. Samus struggled to maintain her sense of self against the voice's gentle but insistent pressure. It wasn't malevolent. She understood that now. It simply had no concept of communication without integration, of understanding without becoming. She had to show it another way. Focusing through the resonator's connection, Samus projected her own memories and understanding of cooperation between separate beings, of communication without loss of self, of the richness that came from diversity of thought and perspective. She showed the voice her experiences with the Luminoth, with the Chozo, with other intelligent species who remained distinct but worked together. She demonstrated the power of alliance, of mutual respect between different life forms. The voice's response was confusion, then curiosity. The patterns in the vortex shifted, becoming more complex, more questioning. It was trying to understand this alien concept, separation that was not isolation, communication that was not integration. Samus pressed her advantage, showing more examples, building a framework of understanding, but maintaining the connection while preserving her own consciousness was exhausting. Her suit's energy levels were dropping rapidly, the strain of the resonator and the mental effort taking their toll. The voice sensed her weakening and surged forward again, not with malice, but with eagerness. It wanted to help her, to end what it perceived as her struggle by bringing her into itself. Tendrils of luminescence wrapped around her suit, seeking entry points, probing for weakness. "No," she said aloud, reinforcing her mental barriers. "I am showing you another way. Watch. Learn." Samus activated a different function of the resonator, creating a small, contained field around herself that mirrored the voice's patterns, but remained distinct. A microcosm demonstrating two conscious entities communicating without merging. The voice paused again, studying this phenomenon. The pressure against Samus's mind eased slightly as it diverted its attention to this new concept. Taking advantage of the moment, Samus pushed herself to her feet and began moving toward the edge of the platform. If she could reach the maintenance passages again, she might find a way back to the surface, back to her ship. She needed to report what she'd found, to warn the Federation of what might await if the voice could not be reasoned with. But as she reached the edge, the platform itself dissolved, leaving her suspended in the luminescent fluid. Yet she didn't sink or drown. The fluid supported her, held her in a bubble of breathable atmosphere while surrounding her completely. The voice was showing her that it had understood something of what she tried to teach. It was maintaining her separation while still establishing contact, a crude but effective attempt at the kind of communication she had demonstrated. Through the connection of the resonator, Samus felt a question forming, not in words, but in concepts and impressions. The voice was asking why separation was valuable, why consciousness should remain distinct when integration offered perfect understanding. Samus struggled to formulate an answer that would make sense to this ancient, alien mind. She focused on the concept of growth through challenge, of evolution through diversity. Separate consciousnesses developed in different ways, solved problems differently, created new ideas that would never arise in a single, homogeneous awareness. The voice considered this, its patterns shifting in what Samus interpreted as deep thought. Around her, the luminescent sea began to organize itself into discrete structures, no longer a chaotic vortex, but a more ordered system with distinct components that nonetheless remained connected. It was learning, adapting its own structure to reflect this new understanding. But then a new tremor shook the chamber, more violent than any before. This wasn't coming from the voice, it was external. Her suit picked up a transmission breaking through the interference. "Repeat, orbital bombardment commencing. Anomaly must be neutralized. All personnel evacuate immediately. The Federation, They must have sent a follow-up mission when she didn't report back, and now they were attempting to destroy the voice from orbit. Typical Federation protocol. If something couldn't be controlled, it would be eliminated. The voice reacted to the bombardment with confusion, then something akin to fear. The ordered patterns it had been forming dissolved into chaotic pulses. It didn't understand this new attack, couldn't process why it was happening, just as it was learning to communicate. Samus felt its confusion through the resonator connection, felt it beginning to revert to its instinctual response. Absorption as protection, integration as defense. If that happened, if the voice lashed out now, it would accelerate its expansion beyond the planet, potentially absorbing any Federation forces in orbit. "Stop!" she cried out, both aloud and through the resonator connection. "This isn't the way." But the voice was panicking, its ancient consciousness experiencing genuine threat for the first time in millions of years. The luminescent fluid around Samus began to pulse erratically, tendrils reaching out in all directions, seeking to absorb and integrate anything it could reach. Samus made a decision. She deactivated the resonator's communication function and switched it to its original purpose, a weapon, but not to destroy the voice entirely. Instead, she targeted the chaotic pulses themselves, using the resonator to impose the ordered patterns the voice had been forming earlier. It was like calming a frightened animal, using the entity's own rhythms to soothe its panic. Gradually, the chaotic pulses stabilized, returning to the more ordered state. Its fear receded enough for communication to resume. Another orbital strike hit, shaking the entire chamber. Ice and rock fell from the distant ceiling, far above the luminescent sea. Time was running out. Through the resonator, Samus projected a clear concept to the voice. Retreat, consolidate, hide. She showed it images of pulling back deeper into the planet, away from the surface where the bombardment was concentrated. Not out of fear, but as a strategic withdrawal, a concept she wasn't sure the voice would understand. To her surprise, it did. The luminescent sea began to recede from the upper chambers, drawing back toward the central node and then beyond, deeper into the planet. The bubble containing Samus remained, carrying her along with the retreating consciousness. "I need to return to the surface," she projected through the resonator, "to stop the attack, to explain what you are." The voice seemed to consider this. Then the bubble containing Samus began to move upward, following a newly formed tunnel that bypassed the collapsing chambers above. It was helping her escape while it retreated. Another sign it was beginning to grasp the concept of cooperation between separate entities. As Samus ascended, she maintained the connection through the resonator, continuing to share concepts and understanding. The entity was learning rapidly now, its ancient intellect capable of assimilating new ideas without physical assimilation of consciousness. Finally, the tunnel opened into the original entrance chamber where she had first encountered Tirasu. The organic structures were withdrawing, pulling back into the depths as the voice consolidated itself below. The bubble deposited her on solid ground, then receded. Through the resonator, Samus felt one final communication from the voice, not in words, but in impressions and concepts that her mind translated approximately as, "We will learn. We will wait. We will speak again." Then the connection faded as the voice retreated deeper beneath the planet's surface, beyond the reach of the Federation bombardment. Samus wasted no time. She sprinted up the tunnel toward the surface, using her space jump ability to ascend the vertical shaft rapidly. Above, she could hear the muffled impacts of orbital strikes hitting the ice. She reached the fissure and emerged into the howling blizzard, her suit immediately compensating for the extreme cold. In orbit, she could see the silhouettes of Federation cruisers, their weapons systems glowing as they prepared another barrage. "Adam, do you read me?" she called, hoping her ship's communication systems were still operational. "Signal established," came the familiar voice of her ship's computer. "Federation Command has been attempting to contact you. They are preparing to deploy a Nova bomb to destroy the anomaly. Patch me through to their command ship, now." A moment later, a gruff voice came through her comm system. "Bounty Hunter Aran, good to hear you survived. Clear the target zone immediately. We're moving to final containment procedures." "Negative," she replied firmly. "The situation is under control. The entity is retreating deeper underground and no longer poses an immediate threat. Our scanners show otherwise, Aran. The energy signature is still active and expanding. The anomaly must be neutralized." The anomaly is a conscious entity capable of learning and cooperation. I've established communication with it. Destroying it now would be both unnecessary and potentially dangerous. You might scatter its essence rather than eliminating it. There was a pause. Then, "Stand by." Samus used the moment to continue moving toward her ship, which thankfully appeared undamaged despite the nearby impacts of the orbital strikes. The blizzard had intensified, reducing visibility to near zero except when illuminated by the flash of weapons fire from above. "Aran," the Federation commander's voice returned. "We're detecting a significant reduction in the energy signature. Confirm your status." As I said, the entity is retreating deeper underground. It's learning to coexist rather than absorb. I need time to make a full report, but this is a first contact situation, not an extermination mission. Another pause, longer this time. Samus reached her ship and entered, immediately bringing its systems online. "Very well," the commander finally replied. "We're standing down the Nova deployment for now, but we'll maintain position in orbit and resume bombardment at the first sign of expansion. You have 24 hours to make your case, Aran." "Understood." Aran out. Samus leaned back in the pilot seat, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The encounter with the voice had drained her physically and mentally in a way few missions ever had. "Adam, prepare to transmit all suit recordings and data to Federation Command, but create a secure backup first. I don't want anything edited out when they review what happened down there." "Understood. May I inquire about the nature of the entity you encountered?" Samus gazed out at the ice planet beneath them, knowing that deep below its surface, an ancient consciousness was contemplating new ideas, new ways of existing that it had never considered in its millions of years of solitary existence. Something old, something that might become either an unprecedented ally or an unimaginable threat, depending on how we proceed. She began removing her helmet, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. And something that I'm now connected to, for better or worse. As her ship lifted off from the frozen surface, she knew that her mission wasn't truly complete. The voice would continue to learn and evolve, incorporating the concepts she had shared. Whether it would fully embrace cooperation over absorption remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. Beneath the ice of Cryosar 9, a greater threat had indeed been awakened. Not because the voice was inherently malevolent, but because it now knew of the wider universe beyond its frozen prison. It would not remain hidden forever, and when it eventually emerged, the galaxy would need to be ready to speak to it in its own language. Samus set course for the Federation command ship, already composing in her mind the report they wouldn't want to hear. That they had sent her to investigate an energy reading, and she had instead made first contact with what might be one of the most ancient consciousnesses in the galaxy. And somewhere in the back of her mind, through the lingering connection of the resonator, she felt the voice continuing its retreat, continuing its contemplation of the new ideas she had shared, waiting, learning, evolving. The true outcome of this mission would not be known for years, perhaps centuries. But Samus Aran had done what the Chozo had raised her to do. She had found a path of balance, a way forward that honored life in all its forms, even those beyond human understanding. As her ship broke atmosphere and the ice planet receded behind her, Samus allowed herself a moment of hope that the voice had truly understood what she had tried to teach it. That separation did not have to mean isolation. That communication did not require integration. And that consciousness could be shared without being consumed. Only time would tell if the lesson had taken root in that ancient alien mind beneath the ice of Cryosar 9.